Gold Key Learning Institute, unlocking the communication barriers. Hello, and welcome to the podcast, How God Speaks to Us, from Gold Key Learning Institute. I'm your host, Chris Jabbas. In this podcast series, Dr. Richard D. Grant Jr. will lead you on a journey revealing how the Bible may be interpreted through the Myers Briggs personality types. You will understand how God communicates and connects with each one of us in exactly the way we need Him to. Dr. Grant's unique perspective will give you a better understanding of the Bible and yourself as he opens your mind and entertains you with humorous examples. In this episode, Dr. Grant will be talking about Peter meeting Jesus in the storm. This is segment number 3 of 30 for those listening in order. All right, let's get to the seminar.
I wanted to offer one more example of water. In the New Testament, I believe whenever we see Peter and Jesus and water all together, we are going to be taught great lessons about the unconscious and about how we deal with this inner realm that so many of us are dealing with today. Peter's second encounter with Jesus apparently was in his boat when he had been fishing all night. Jesus steps into the boat, pushes off from shore, and preaches to the crowd. And when he's finished, he turns to Peter and says, "Simon, put out your boat into deep water and put down your nets for a catch." Now think, Simon is very much like every human being, making mistakes, trying. Simon is like all of us. And think of the water as our depths, and the boat is our little thin hull of ego defenses. And Jesus says, "Simon, go out into really deep water and put down your nets." Could they be the nets of our conscious understanding to try to get something? And Simon says, "Master, all through the night, the dark night of my soul, I have labored and we've caught nothing. But at your word, we will put down the nets." And so they put the nets down, and they get a huge haul of fish, so great that the nets begin to break. And they call to their companions who come in another boat, and they fill the boats with fish almost to a sinking point. Simon falls to his knees before Jesus and says, "Go away from me. I am a sinful man. No one looks on the face of Yahweh and lives." And Jesus said, "Do not be afraid, Simon, for after this I will make you a fisher of men. All that you have learned about finding life in the depths, I will teach you how to do that with human beings in their depths." And so, notice that the nets were breaking when they first had this uprush of life, of food. When teenagers go on retreat and they encounter Jesus, it breaks their nets. It breaks their mind. You ever come back from retreat with a bunch of teenagers? They're wired, it blows their mind, literally, if they have a real religious experience. And so it's too much for us when we're young. It's too much, often. Well, just like Peter, we're trying to figure out, who is this person? What are we to do? And another encounter on water occurs when they're in a boat on the lake and a storm kicks up on the lake. And if you've been in a sailboat on a lake in a storm, you're terrified. I don't know if you find it happy going, but I find it terrifying, because the difference between being on land when you go from point A to point B with your muscles and your bones and your vision, that's control. That's when you know how to do things. That's what we call conscious life. But when you're in a sailboat, invisible forces move you like wind and current that you don't control. And to go from point A to point B involves tacking back and forth and going nowhere fast, it seems. And so you do it God's way, by cooperating with invisible forces often. And so in a sailboat, these are trained sailors. The water is coming in over the side, And they're terrified, and they call to Jesus who's asleep in the stern, "Master, save us. We're perishing." And Jesus wakes up, and he says to them, not pass the bucket, but where is your faith? The opposite of chaos, the opposite of control is not chaos. Now, when you're out of control, the opposite of control is faith. Faith is the psychological attitude of having to relate to something when we're not in control of it. That's faith. We get to faith by default, usually, kicking and screaming, I think. And Jesus says, where is your faith? And then he calms the wind and the sea. And the men say, who is this man that even the wind and the sea obey him? The wind and the sea are universal mythological symbols for the masculine and the feminine forces of nature, of great destructive power. They also refer to the inner forces in each one of us. Who is this man that even the wind and the sea obey him? And then they're at shore. That seems to be the lesson. There's another time they're in the boat. They're in a boat after Jesus has stayed on shore after multiplying the loaves and fishes, bread from the land, fish from the sea. He feeds the conscious and the unconscious. And he stays to pray, and they go out at night on the night sea journey of the hero, they call it in mythology, the real test of character. And as they go out at 2 a.m, they're not making any headway at all, and they look and see Jesus coming to them, walking on the water. Now, human beings can't walk on water. If you want to look at it only analogically, we can't come directly in contact with those depths, or we sink. We aren't made to be able to deal directly with the unconscious, in a sense. But Jesus does it. He walks on the water toward them. And the men in the boat say, it's a ghost, they cry out. But Peter says, if it's really you, Master, bid me come to you over the waters. And Jesus said, come, Simon. And Peter gets out of the boat and walks on the water. At times in our life, we are bidden to get out of our position of safety and walk directly on these depths, these dangerous depths. And then Peter begins to notice the violence of the wind and the waves. And down he sinks, like Peter, the rock that he is. And Jesus is right there next to him, very quickly, and says, Simon, where is your faith? The rule, Simon, when you're doing this, is that you keep your eyes on me, not on the violence of the wind and the waves. We are so tempted, I'm just thinking of an example of therapy, of paying attention to the tragedy and the pain and the awfulness of it. Yes, it's really there. But if we only pay attention to that, down we'll go. The point is to keep our eyes on him. And then we don't sink. And then he helps Peter back into the boat, sputtering.
Thank you for listening to this podcast from the Gold Key Learning Institute. In our next episode, Dr. Grant will discuss more lessons from Peter. If you have found this content useful, we would recommend you visit our website, goldkeylearninginstitute.com, and sign up for our audio and video updates. We will alert you when our next episode is published, as well as highlight additional resources we have available. Until next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked this content, please subscribe by clicking the red button in our video here, or you can click the red subscribe button beneath this video if you are watching on YouTube.